Christopher Van. Welcome to LAC Flying School. I'm one of the instructors at the school and we're going to give a series of pre-flight briefings just to help for your flying training, help you prepare for the lessons and something that can be used after your lesson just to reflect and review. What we're going to start to have a look at is the first lesson, Effects of Controls 1. The aim is to learn the effects of the flying controls and to select and hold an attitude in trim. Why we cover this is so we can start to learn the effect of each control on the aircraft and what that does and what effect it has. Hopefully you've done a trial lesson, so this now starts to build into learning how to correctly fly the aircraft. Threat and error management. It's something that used to be called airmanship, but now we give it a more structured term, a more formal term. And in a summary, it's a way of thinking ahead to predict errors, to avoid, if we can, our errors and threats, but also to manage. And the key thing is to manage any that occur. So threats we have for this flight will be other airplanes in the sky, errors which are commonly internal to the cockpit, losing control, and the key point on management is we're going to keep a good lookout when we fly. And we use a clock code in the aircraft so you can point out any aircraft in the sky, and it gives us a nice way of knowing which portion of the sky to both look in. Also, we need to know who's in control, because at some point you'll be flying, at other points the instructor will be flying. So you must have a formal way of which we hand over. Now we'll go through it in the aircraft, we'll use a handover takeover technique, and at other times when the instructor is teaching, he'll use a follow me through method, which is a way of you just feeling what the instructor is doing on the controls. Now the exercise, we'll start off with the external checks, This is commonly covered as a separate lesson, it can be known as the walk around or the A check. After that we'll do the internal, starting the engine and getting the aircraft ready to taxi. Then we'll taxi towards the hold near the start of the runway. A few common points. When you start taxiing, you'll find your feet will be doing the steering and you'll be using the throttle and brakes to control the aircraft's speed. Always try and do throttle before the brakes. Once we're in the air, we're going to start by having a look at the datum attitude. The attitude is the position of the horizon relative to the aircraft nose. Commonly we see it down the bottom of the canopy. The datum attitude is then the set picture, and it's going to be the set gap between the horizon serving as our reference, as our pitch reference, and the bottom of the canopy. So that's going to be the normal picture, and it's the easiest way we can see the movement of the nose. After that, we're going to start to have a look at the primary controls. And we have three controls on the aircraft: the elevator, ailerons and rudder. The elevator is on the back of the aircraft at the rear and just moves up and down. The ailerons are on the ends of the wings. Again, they move up and down, one going up, one going down at the same time. The rudder is again at the rear of the aircraft, mounted on the vertical stabilizer, also known as the fin, and it just moves left and right. Now the elevator and ailerons are controlled using the yoke. When we move the yoke forward and aft, the elevator moves up and down. When we rotate the yoke left and right, the ailerons will again move up and down in turn. Lastly, the rudder controlled using the rudder pedals, with one foot moving forward, one foot moving rearwards at the same time, and then moves the rudder, as I said, left and right. So the effects these has. The elevator primary effect is pitch. Just the movement of the nose going up and down on our horizon. Our ailerons, our primary effect is roll. And in the cockpit you'll see the aircraft rotating around the horizon. And finally the rudder, the primary effect is yaw. And the aircraft moving through our last axis, which is running down through the aircraft vertically, and you'll just see the nose moving side to side across the horizon. So those are 3 primary effects. Now 2 of those, the control will make the aircraft do the primary effect, but then it will do something else. The ailerons and rudder, when the aircraft rolls, what happens is that the gravity starts to take over because the lift is no longer pointing straight up. The aircraft will start to slip slide down through the air, and you get a lot more air resistance on the fin and the side of the aircraft. Air resistance holding it up now makes the nose yaw down in the same direction, which then, our further effect is then yaw. With the rudder, the primary effect this time is yaw. The further effect is a roll. The reason for this is as the aircraft yaws, one wing now moves faster through the air. As it moves faster, it has more airflow going over it, which creates more lift. More lift raises one wing and creates the roll. So both of these make a further effect in the same direction. Now, if they weren't to be corrected, they will lead the aircraft into a spiral descent. The elevator only has the primary effect of pitch. It will change our airspeed, but it doesn't have a further effect. Now there's going to be 4 points we're going to note when we operate the primary flying controls. We're going to look for smooth progressive movement at all times. At the neutral point, the aircraft will maintain its attitude. The aircraft will only react or move in pitch roll yaw when we move the controls away from the neutral point. The aircraft response is proportional to the control deflection we use, so the more control deflection, the larger the rate of response. And lastly, the aircraft moves relative to the pilot. No matter if the aircraft was upside down or at a different attitude, the aircraft will always react in the same way, with pitch, roll and yaw. After we've had a look at those primary effects, we'll have a look at the effect of speed on the aircraft. And again, the way the aircraft flies is all about airflow over the controls. At a high speed, there's a lot more airflow. The controls will feel firmer and the aircraft will be more responsive. At a low speed, with less airflow going over the controls, they will feel less firm and the aircraft will behave less responsive. After that, we'll have a look at the effect of slipstream. Slipstream is the air which is created off the back of a propeller. Now we can imagine the propeller and the engine at the front of the aircraft. This creates a channel of air coming down the centre. This only now affects the controls at the rear of the aircraft. So at an idle power from the engine, the elevator and rudder are less responsive. But on the wingtips, the ailerons are unaffected. At full power, with a lot more airflow going over the controls, the ailerons and the rudder are now more responsive. But again, the ailerons are unaffected. Now lastly, we'll have a look at trimming. Depending on the aircraft you fly, there may be a rudder trim as well. Majority of the Cessnas will only have a trim on the elevator. So when using the elevator, if we find we're having to hold a constant force on the yoke to maintain our attitude, we can use the trim to make our life easier. If we're having to push forward on the elevator, or push forward, I should say, on the yoke, we can move the trim wheel forward. It works in a natural sense. If we have to be holding a rearwards force on the yoke, we move the trim wheel back. If we, on the pipers, have a rudder trim, and we're having to use a right foot pressure, we can move the trim wheel to the right. Again, it just works in a natural sense. Now, the way we trim the aircraft is always to hold the attitude first and sense the force we're holding. Then, while we're looking outside, we move the trim wheel, initially a coarse setting by feel, until the control goes light. After that, we can check and then trim again, move the trim wheel finely by using the attitude, just to refine and get the aircraft completely in trim. If we have more than one trimmer, as I say, on the pipers where there is an elevator and a rudder trim, we just move the worst one first. And that is it. That's our effects controls 1. So thanks for watching, and hopefully this use, and our next lesson will be the effects controls 2.